We're interviewing Wolf today. How are you?
Very good. How are you?
I'm well. We'll begin with the set of questions. Now, for other people, I'm just going to describe a couple of differences between this interview and the other interviews that are mainly done by Jack. These are going to use a different set of questions, and I will not provide a diagnosis at the end of the interview, most likely. So the first question, Wolf, is tell me about yourself. What sort of person are you? What can you tell me about yourself that would help me understand what sort of person you are?
I think a good way to describe myself, I don't know if this defeats the purpose or anything, but
The purpose is to see what kind of answer you come up with.
okay, cool. I would say I'm definitely an extroverted person. Um, I like punk rock. I really rebel against being told what to do, especially if you can't give me a reason you're telling me what to do, you know? I feel like a lot of people just kind of get herded through society, and I try to make sure I don't do that. Um, but I'm not an angry person. I also like a lot of smooth jazz, you know. Um, and I'm a people person. I feel like there's people that recharge when they're out with friends and people that recharge when they're home in front of a book curled up on the couch, and I definitely recharge when I'm out with friends.
Well, there are people who recharge, but sure. But do you think that that's universally true? Are there other times when you would prefer to just be alone for a while?
You know, in my older age, yes. It didn't used to be that way, but I found that every once in a while, uh, I do just like to sit down and put Star Trek on and veg out to some Netflix, you know.
But much
Just
less so when you were younger. Yeah, I think that that human beings possess both of these qualities, right? There's widely this narrative, especially that that introverts, especially in the typology community, right? That introverts are people that charge by themselves and don't like to deal with other people. But I think that both of these dynamics are true of most people, at least some of the time.
yeah, I can agree with that.
All right. Is there anything else that you'd like to say, just in a very general sense about yourself?
Um,
I think your answer, by the way, a lot of people don't like this question. Um, I think your answer was perfectly fair uh, and wasn't totally uninformative.
cool. I'd like to shoot for a little bit higher than not totally uninformative, but uh, Uh, yeah, I can't really think anything right off the bat that really describes me uh, too much, you know, too perfectly anyway.
So, okay, that's fine. What do you do for a living? And if you're a student, what do you study? And how did you come to choose or not choose that vocation or field of study?
I own a tour company. Bad Wolf Ghost Tours is the highest rated ghost tour company in San Antonio right now. We do the city's only haunted pub crawl, so that's really cool as well. Um, and I kind of actually fell into it. I'd always been a paranormal investigator by hobby and a tour guide by trade. And I got hired by a guy who did a ghost tour company for a while, and he wanted me to purchase his company. Um, but then he kind of screwed me over. After I did everything to be able to purchase it, I ended up not being able to get the loan because he lied on his taxes. So he wouldn't release his tax information to me. Um, so now instead of having a very wealthy retirement, he has the number one competitor in San Antonio.
Sorry, say so. He is you're his competitor now.
Yeah. Number one ghost tour. There's about 6 or 7 different companies that do ghost tours in San Antonio, but I'm the highest rated.
I see. And what brings you to be interested in doing paranormal investigations? Is it something you've always been interested in?
Actually, no. I think I got interested in the paranormal because I was just pissed off that the world was so boring. You know, we don't get Batman, we don't get fairies or unicorns, we don't get aliens probably. We may possibly get ghosts. And there's some evidence out there to suggest that. And if you look in the right places, it's not entirely hard to find. So I think what got me into paranormal investigation was the hope that the world is not so goddamn boring.
And what do you think about that? Is it actually so goddamn boring, or
am I so boring because I think it's boring?
is it mostly boring, or is it not at all boring? How do you appraise that question? If I asked you whether or not the world is in fact boring, based on your experience as in this perhaps somewhat unique profession of being a ghost tour guide.
I think actually now, after I've already been into paranormal investigating and things like that, I'm actually not 100% sure that ghosts are completely real. I know there's something paranormal, and I know that we find evidence of it all the time, and that's even more of a mystery to me, and I like that. I would say, knowing what I know now, the world is not completely boring, but it is mildly boring, and we as a society do our best to make it that way. We put a regulation on everything, a stamp on everything, a label on everything, rules for everything, and we try to push people into these cookie cutter lives. But I think with the proper self-liberation, the world is actually pretty interesting.
I see. Um, so you mentioned that there was evidence, perhaps not for ghosts, but for something. Could you tell me about what that evidence is? As somebody that doesn't know very much about paranormal investigations, but is somewhat skeptical.
Right. Well, it's kind of the stuff you'll see in horror movies or reality TV shows where they do look for ghosts. You catch a lot of things in cameras, camera phones, photographs, recordings, voices that aren't there, faces that aren't there. And that can kind of be explained through just subconscious matrixing in your mind. Your mind wants to make sense of something, so it puts pieces together, maybe when there's no real pattern. But what I think can't be explained is, just for instance, I was sitting at a haunted bar the other day, and my beer bottle, as we started talking about one of the ghosts, mind you, started spinning on the table. Now, we lifted it and we checked the table. Both the beer bottle didn't have any significant condensation. The table was not wet. It wasn't that smooth or slippery. Nobody else could get their bottle to move. We couldn't get it to happen again. But sitting down, a group of maybe 5 of us just saw this bottle kind of just on its own fruition, kind of vigorously start spinning. And to me, it's the things moving by themselves that really is very exciting evidence, because there's no movement without force. So where in the hell did that force come from, you know?
So you would say that you find evidence in instances from your sort of small instances from everyday lives.
My personal experiences, yes.
Yeah. Do you also think that there's a lot of, like for instance, if you were to watch these like TV shows like paranormal investigations and things like this, that there are a lot of, just a lot of nonsense that's shown?
Absolutely. I actually know that for certain because I kind of know how the shows are filmed. For instance, they bill it to where it happened in one night, like it's a one night long paranormal investigation. It's actually 8 investigations in a row where they're basically stayed up all night for about 10 hours. So they chop up these hours and hours and hours and hours of photo film into just 20 minutes of actual investigation in the show. And they wear the same clothes every day for 8 days. That way they look like it's one night. There's a lot of that kind of stuff that goes on.
Have you done this type of filming before, or is it you just are familiar with the industry and like you have friends or things like this?
I'm just familiar with the industry. I actually do a tour through a building that was on the Ghost Adventures TV show. And the owner, of course, had to go through it with them. So she knows everything about it.
So how long have you been doing this, running this ghost tour?
Company has been open for 14 months. And in 14 months, we became the #1 ghost tour. And we've been competing with companies that have been here for 12 years. So a little bit of a bala that way.
What kinds of things did you do for work before that?
I'm actually thinking about writing a book about that. I had 20 different odd jobs before I opened a business. I've been a bartender, a lifeguard, a cashier, I worked at a factory x-raying metal pieces for airplanes. I sold flowers. I managed a comic book store. I managed a natural health food store. I never really, I don't think, fit into any of those because they didn't have the aspect of, say, theater that being a tour guide has. And I was a tour guide before I started this company as well. But I think I just like being on stage.
I see. So are there any particular reasons that you took these jobs, or you just basically took a bunch of jobs that were available to pay the bills? Yep. That you intended to be short-term?
It's not that I intended them to be short-term, simply because I didn't know where I wanted to go in life as far as my career. I intended to maximize every one of them financially. So if I could get in just because it was a job that was available and then 2 years later be a CEO, that's what I intended. But it never worked out that way, of course. That's easier said than done.
Sure. Any of the jobs that you took before that particularly stand out? That may have been more than merely a job you took to earn money at the time?
I really enjoyed bartending, and I really enjoyed managing a health food and health supplement store. Mind you, a lot of the a lot of the health supplements are complete bullshit. Snake oil. They don't even have the active ingredient that they claim to have. But it was just fun atmospheres both times. The coworkers were fun. The people that came in were fun.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Do you have any interests or hobbies other than the paranormal?
Yeah, I really like sci-fi film and TV. I am an avid, you can't tell because my voice is messed up today, but an avid karaoke bar practitioner, patron. I paint figures for D&D and such. I play a lot of D&D as well. Um, I write a little bit. I like to play board games with friends. Um, I dabble in a lot of things, but I don't commit to too many things.
Okay. Why do you think that is, that you dabble but don't commit to too many different things?
I get bored.
Okay. And
Attention span of a goldfish.
it's just always been that way for you. You can't manage to focus on things for too long, or you need to do something different.
Right.
Okay.
I'll go to a bar with my friends, which I love doing, and uh, 2, 3 hours later, let's go to another bar. Let's not stay in this one place for that long, unless it's just a really cool atmosphere.
What have people seen as your weaknesses? What do you dislike about yourself?
I think those are two different questions.
There are two.
I think what's seen as my personal weakness a lot is uh, um, it's not that I say I'm going to do something and then don't do it just because I don't feel like it. I just a lot of the times I'll forget to, even though I really intended to, or I try to remember my hardest. Um, but I do my best. Like if I say I'm going to be someplace, I at least make an appearance, even if I'm not there for as long as I said I was going to be there. Um, I think that's what people see as my flaws, the follow through, and I think some people probably think I have anger issues uh, because of my rebellious nature, which I can kind of agree and kind of disagree. I see where they're coming from. Um,
But you said earlier that you were not a particularly angry person.
I don't think I am, but I'm quick to anger. Uh, but it's fleeting. It goes away almost instantly. I know how to deal with my emotion when it comes to anger, and I can choose whether I want to, if you pissed me off, I can choose whether I want to be a dick back to you or if I want to play it suave. Um, but if I let myself be angry, I can be very quick to anger. It's a very fleeting, a candle that burns brightest burns quickest.
And
Um,
so, in what is if I did something to piss you off, what's the likelihood that you would be a dick back to me, for instance?
Not very. I mean, you personally seem.
It's not about not me personally, but
Oh,
what would somebody have to do in order to make you decide to continue to be vindictive?
um, I think they'd have to. I think they'd really have to try to affect my lifestyle. Like, there's a lot of people that want me to find religion. And if you don't drop it when I say I'm not going to find your religion, I found my own, um, I might be a little bit of an asshole to you. Um, I guess if you try to affect the way I live and the way I exist, I get angry. But if you don't tell me what to do, we're cool, you know?
I see. So what is the religion that you found? This is skipping ahead a little, but this is a question I asked later in the interview.
Cool. I am a eclectic pagan,
Okay.
which basically means I go around and I find bits and pieces of old non-Judeo-Christian religions and piece them together to find my own kind of pantheon. I don't believe in organized religion, pretty much.
But do you believe in deities, or would you describe your beliefs as purely spiritual?
I'm leaning towards spiritual, but I think that symbols have an energy. I think we're all connected to the world through this energy, and I think a deity can be a symbol. So, um, say you wanted to send some fertile energy to somebody who's trying to get pregnant or something like that, you can bring up Freya or some deity that symbolizes pregnancy and send that energy their way, and it's not necessarily that the deity exists as a conscious life form, but it exists in the fact that it's a symbol and symbols have energy and we're all connected by this energy.
So it's not that the deity exists in the conventional sense, but rather that they symbolize something which is transmittable.
Agreed.
I see. So you answered the question, what do people see as your weaknesses? What do you see as your weaknesses if they're different?
Ugh, my immune system. No. I think what I see as my weakness a lot of the times can be my passion combined with my ability to get very bored and very easily and very done with something very quickly. So I can be fully gung ho about a hobby or a person or a business opportunity and put a bunch of effort into it and maybe a bunch of money or emotional uh, weight into it, and then a week later want nothing to do with it. Um, Kind of like I run full headed into something without looking. I would say that's my weakness.
And why do you perceive that as a weakness? What I mean by that is, what are the ways in which you think that state of being mercurial affects you negatively?
A lot of heartbreak, um, a lot of financial loss. Say I'll buy a $150 board game and then realize I have no one to play it with. um,
Well, sure, but then you could also eventually find people to play it with and take it off the shelf later, and maybe it would be the best board game you've ever played.
right. I almost bought a parrot the other day. Now, I don't know if you know anything about parrots, but they're very, 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 very expensive, and they're very, 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 very hard to keep. They require a schedule. They attach to one person and one person only. So if I leave on vacation for 3 or 4 days, which I kind of do quite often, um, that parrot will miss actively me and not like anyone else and become very stressed out, and it'll be a very bad environment for it. But I was in love with this parrot and I almost bought it, even though my lifestyle does not um, uh, match an animal like that. It wouldn't be fair to it, and it probably wouldn't be fair to me because I would have to change my lifestyle and for it. Um, and I usually just make that decision and just go for it. I don't usually do what I did in this instance and decide to hold off on the parrot for a minute.
Yeah.
And that's how I get myself in trouble that way.
Yeah, the reason, I guess, one of the things I ask about this is because you don't seem like a person that would often allow yourself to experience or to dwell on, let's say, the negative consequences of caprice or instances of caprice. But
I can agree with that.
It seems like you see, perhaps in a more reflective way, the ways in which it is damaging to you. Seems like seems to me that there's a glimmer of insight there that's not that is transient.
I can agree with that. I mean, I can recognize my flaws and maybe do damage control on them without, it's like if you have a self-destructive behavior, but you just roll with it anyway because you like it, kind of, you know? That's what I would say I would do mostly.
You mentioned that you go on vacation somewhat regularly for, say, 3 or 4 days. Where do you go?
Next week I'm going up to Texoma, the border of Texas and Oklahoma, to visit my brother because this month holds his birthday. And then after that, I'm kind of set on going to Glen Rose, Texas, because it's only 3.5 hours away drive, and it's considered to be one of the dinosaur capitals of the world. They have more preserved dinosaur footprints than almost any place on Earth. And I love
sorry, you cut out for a few seconds.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I was talking about
you were going to go to Glen Rose in a few weeks, and then something.
Yeah, I'm gonna go to Glen Rose because it's the dinosaur capital of the world. It's called a couple of times that, and there's another city in Canada that's also called it. They fight for the name, but this one's in Texas. It's only 3.5 hours away, and they have more dinosaur preserved footprints in their state park than anywhere in the world, pretty much, that I know of, anyway. So I'm gonna go do that because I really like archaeology and dinosaurs and the sci-fi fantasy aspect of we used to have dragons on Earth, you know. So,
well, not dragons. I mean, you had specific creatures that had these specific properties that very few of them, I think, were able to breathe fire in the way that many mythical dragons are, but they had other cool features.
Right. Not specifically dragons, but I think that's probably where our legend of the dragon came from, is dinosaurs. But
so it sounds like, yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say that's just me.
Yeah. So it sounds like you do a lot of traveling. How far do you usually travel? Do you do a lot of international traveling?
No, I don't feel like it's necessary. I feel like if you go a little bit closer to home, after a certain distance, it's basically the same as, going so far away. You're completely separated from your world. Yeah. And
you're still exploring something. It just happens to be closer rather than something that's farther away.
Right. And because that's a little bit cheaper, you can do that more often. So instead of spending $3,000 to go to France, I'd rather spend $300 to go to Glen Rose, Texas.
Makes sense. What areas of your life have other people seen as your strength, and what do you think are your strengths?
That's a harder question for me, and I didn't expect it to be. I think my personal, what I would think is my strength, is probably my charisma. I can walk into a bar or a crowded place and I can find somebody to hang out with and make a new friend and have a good time. I also, you watch any or if you read any comic books, a lot of the times there's a character in a superhero team that isn't very powerful and is not very bright usually, but they're kind of the heart of the group and they hold the group together and they're fun and they're usually the comic relief. But really, I think their important thing is they hold the group together. And I think I do that with my friends through There's been adultery, there's been breakups, there's been all sorts of things moving around, but I make sure my friends get together and hang out, and we've stayed a group for a very long time.
How large of a group?
There's probably 9 of us,
Okay.
and then some satellites that show up every once in a while.
Yeah.
And then I guess what people would say my strengths are, and not just me thinking it. Um, People are really damn impressed that I opened a company right now. And so I think it's not that they think I'm a business mind, because I'm not, or a money mind, because I'm not. I think it's that passion they're impressed with. If I really, really set my mind to something, I can pretty much accomplish it.
They're impressed, say, with your dedication
Yeah.
and perhaps initiative.
Yeah.
I see. In what areas of your life, if any, would you like help?
I don't know that anyone can help me, but if someone could help me, I actually feel lonely a lot, and I like to be around people like 100% of the time, and I I don't know that that's necessarily a flaw, because I can deal with it pretty well. But if I could have help not being lonely, that would be fantastic.
And your way of dealing with it is by doing many things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I'm going to go I travel alone,
Mhm.
but as long as I have something to keep my mind occupied, good.
Do you ever travel with friends, or occasionally but not often?
Occasionally, I work a very different schedule than everyone else. Everyone else works 9 to 5 and they have the weekends off.
Mhm.
I work the weekends and I'm most busy 6 to 12. So I actually work every day a little bit, but
But you mostly work like weekends, evenings, Friday, Saturday evening.
right,
Yeah.
are my most busy times.
Yeah, that can be difficult. And what did you do last Friday? Because of the Friday in this question is quite intentional, um, because people have very different answers for this day. But based on your schedule, it might be a little bit unusual based on
Right.
what we just discussed. But let's go with it.
Actually, last Friday was a little bit different for me than regular Fridays. Um, Regularly, I have 3 tours on Friday. One at 6, one at 8, and one at 10, not getting over until 12.
Mhm.
But I didn't have my late tour last Friday. So I believe it's hard for me to remember, honestly, but I believe I went out. I know I didn't let that Friday just pass. I think I may have gone to, I think that was the day I went to my friend's house, my friend Gage and Elise, part of the group I mentioned earlier, and smoked cigars and drank beer and played Trivial Pursuit.
Trivial Pursuit. Do you enjoy Trivial Pursuit, or is it just sort of a thing you pass the
Very
time?
much so. I like Trivial Pursuit. I go to a pub trivia game every Wednesday, full of useless knowledge.
I would say that I have no problem with trivia. I enjoy doing trivia. Trivial Pursuit, I think, is a very the questions are very specialized and not very generally accessible.
I can agree with that. I almost always lose, but it's
Yeah,
still fun.
it's like is everyone is good at something, and then but nobody likes Trivial Pursuit, I think, because no matter what categories, you're good in 2 categories, but then there are these other 4 categories you always hate getting.
Well, we played a Trivial Pursuit version of the game, and it had a wager system to where if
I
you
see.
got you could bet on if someone was going to get their question right or wrong, and if you got enough chips from betting, you could use those chips to buy your answer. So say I was bad at sports, which I am, I can pay 10 chips and get that answer, and now I don't need my sports answer anymore.
I
And
see.
so I like the system of that a little bit better.
It's an improvement. This is sort of getting off topic, but that seems like it's an improvement, but much could be done to improve the game regardless. This is just sort of a side topic. Is like one thing I'm interested in is principles of game design. What makes a game interesting? So anyway, that was these were all of the questions, and I think that I have a pretty strong idea about what your type is, but I'm not going to describe it in the end of this video. We can discuss it afterwards. There was one other question I was going to ask you, which is, do you get bored doing the same haunted houses, the same things for your ghost tour?
Absolutely. I manage that by I adapt the show a little bit. I throw in jokes that are new, or I move it around a little bit and see if I can get a better, maybe laugh. I just added a Bluetooth portable speaker to the show. That way during walks, not during the stories because it gets too cluttered with the downtown noise, we can play some creepy, scary music to kind of set the mood. I'm always innovating. I'm researching. I'm adding no stories. I'm taking stories out if they're not that good. And I think that's part of why the tour is such high rated, is because it's constantly a work of art that's not finished.
And you're I see. So you're continuing to make changes and keep yourself busy on it. And so far, this has led you to still enjoy what you're doing, even though it becomes very repetitive after doing the same thing every week.
Absolutely. And I found myself taking more vacations now because I've done it for so long.
And because probably you can, because it seems like it's been relatively successful.
Right. It has. Because I can, and because I do get bored of it a little bit and I need a little bit of a break. But I'm also trying to hire right now. That way somebody else can do it for me when I'm bored.
I see. How is that going?
The reason the tour is a success is not the substance matter. It's my deliverance and my performance.
Yes.
So I have to find another me. So
and you have not found that yet.
It's going slowly.
Well, good luck with that.
Thank you.
I think that will be difficult for you, but perhaps you'll find somebody to step in. Anyway, that was all of the questions I have. Awesome. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Let me just stop recording.